Welcome back to Screen Sleuths. I'm Rob, and I managed to not get stuck working with Tomasino Molto as late as he wanted to keep me there, so we have a chance to discuss Episode 5 of Presumed Innocent, Pregame. In today's video, we're going to look at just how much Tommy knows and how involved he is, Brian Ratzer's semi-confession and how the Bunny Davis case may still have a part to play, the Savage family's continued aftermath, and a mysterious new possible suspect. So starting with my biggest question after this episode, who the heck decided to use these names? Tomasino? Rastaz? Okay, but in all seriousness, we want to take the time to really dive into Tommy Molto, which apparently does not seem to be a common thing for people to do. Much of this episode pointed us further down the path that Tommy is not a well-liked member of the team or very confident. We get 3 examples of either concern about Tommy or just outright distaste for him from Eugenia, the flashback with Carolyn, and Nico. Eugenia has never hidden her feelings about Tommy, but further pushes back, rather aggressively, on the idea that Rusty could have done this, which receives a somewhat threatening response from Tommy that he and Nico value loyalty, and backfires a bit on his first witness. Carolyn's flashback confirms that Tommy was who she was talking to Michael about not wanting to work with. Tommy's need for approval and attention does not allow him to take that feedback well, and especially from Carolyn. Nico lastly lays it out pretty frankly by asking Tommy what has been wrong with him for the last month. Could this be a guilty man attempting to cover his tracks? Or is it a grieving man who lost someone that he was in love with? Based on his reactions to the candid photos of Carolyn, our assumption that he was infatuated with her seems to be pretty accurate. Was this attraction strong enough that he could have lashed out violently against her, using his position as a way to potentially cover himself? He does state during his soapboxing that, quote, "If you are high enough, you can get away with anything." This may be why he pushed so hard to be the lead prosecutor on the trial. Hard to have the spotlight on you when you are the one controlling the spotlight. On the other side of the courtroom, Rusty and Raymond, well, mostly Rusty, has forced Brian Ratzer's hand after their fight on the porch. After making the somewhat stupid decision of trespassing after his assault, Rusty convinces Brian to speak to the legal team in hopes of helping his defense. A defense that may just hurt Raymond more than anyone if his dream is any foreshadowing. But during this conversation, we do get somewhat of an admission from Brian that it would be logical and possible that he had slept with Bunny Davis. What we do not get is confirmation that he was ever involved with Liam Reynolds. So we do see the path that we discussed last week of Rusty wanting to find a credible alternative to himself, but unfortunately it's not a very strong one. Even Maya, who seems to be the most level-headed of anyone in this show, doesn't see the full scope of it working. But what Maya does bring to the table this episode is that Carolyn was tied up in a similar fashion to Bunny, but not exactly the same. A fact that Nico and Molto may not yet know, as Nico is asking for Tommy to follow up with Reynolds for their case. So while Brian may prove to be a dead end for Rusty's defense, the connection to Liam Reynolds' incarceration may still be a clue to who killed Carolyn. A bit closer to home for Rusty, however, his family is still dealing with the ongoing changes caused by the trial. Jaden seems to be doing her best to be a voice of reason for her father, but through the conversations with Barbra, we still get the impression that she isn't sure Rusty didn't commit the murder. Kyle is throwing his bicycle in the trash due to what he says is a loose chain and sticking gears. Likely story. A bike that we also see Tommy note at the beginning of the episode from the pictures. So, does Rusty putting it in the trunk potentially make it look suspicious? Or did he know that disposing of it made the family look even more guilty? Based on Kyle's response, I'm actually under the impression that Barbra may have told him to get rid of it during their private conversation. Now, Barbra herself is taking the steps with Cliff because of her want to feel wanted, and therefore distancing herself even further from Rusty. But this may not end up working out for her, as Raymond wants to use her as a character witness during the trial. Now, Rusty may not want to put her in this position, but is this also a possible opening to exposing herself under oath? To that point, Barbra, still a very highly likely candidate for the killer. She's been my theory from the beginning of the show. However, the last 2 episodes have also very strongly pointed towards Tommy Molto's potential motivations. Even Rusty himself at this point still cannot fully be ruled out. But let's be honest, I think most of us would not still be watching the show if we believed it was Rusty. Even if Tommy's opening statements were so strong that now Rusty may be worried about his defense. But no, I want to tell you about a mysterious new challenger that's stepping into this cage match of killers that I actually mentioned earlier in this video, and that's Eugenia. For someone who has been such a background piece of this story, she has received a high amount of screen time. For example, why do we get the seemingly useless cutscene of Raymond greeting her when he meets with De La Guardia and Molto about the plea? Screen time, I might add, that when summed up could very well point to a motive. Eugenia has been one of, if not the most staunch supporter of Rusty's innocence. When she found out that she was being called as a witness, she very quickly confronted Tommy about why. When Tommy pushes on what the line of questioning will be and asks her about her potential involvement with Rusty, not only does she become aggressive to Tommy, but she never actually answers the question. Now, the full theory here is that Eugenia and Rusty had at one point become involved outside of his affair with Carolyn. Eugenia, believing that his marriage was ending, saw Carolyn as the only one in the way. Becoming jealous of the rekindling, and by removing Carolyn from the picture, she and Rusty could be together. This, along with her potential access to the Bunny Davis case, could point to her having knowledge of the scene and recreating a similar, but not exact replica, as Maya had noted. So let's see what happens in episode 6 now that the trial has started, and then we'll reconvene after our recess next week to go even further into this mystery. If you're a fan of what we're doing here at the channel, please be sure to like and subscribe to let the ultimate judge, the algorithm, know that we're on the right track. And until that time, stay sleuthy.